What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of That AI Show. I'm one of your hosts, Hernan Vasquez. Hope that everyone is doing really well today. I am here with another one of our hosts, David White. What's going on, David White?
Oh, just working. Standard Friday morning stuff.
Oh yeah, because you're from the future. I keep on saying that. It's Thursday evening here. So
Not here. I tell you what, everyone, if you're not already on Friday morning time, look forward to a lovely morning. Things are good. The future is strong.
okay, I'm really looking forward for my Friday morning. So that's gonna happen in a couple of hours. But today we have some really cool
Just
stuff.
really quickly, my
Yes.
my favorite my favorite part of working with you is that every week you forget that the earth is round. Every week you forget.
But what could
Amazing.
happen? What could happen? I'm asking you, and I'm asking to the listeners, is that what could happen if you keep on going west? You know, because when you go west, you go back in time. If you keep on going west and you never go back east, if I fly right now, I'm in Buenos Aires, Argentina. If I fly to the Pacific, I gain a couple of hours, right? Because it's earlier there. So I can leave here, let's say at 8 p.m. my local time, and then I will get there at 8 p.m. local time or something like that. And then travel doesn't matter. What could happen if I keep on traveling west? Maybe we
Dude, I
can ask
think
ChatGPT.
there'd have to be like an international police force that would stop you from doing that sort of stuff.
Probably.
Because you just can't be allowed to go back in time whenever you want.
I don't know, man. Let's ask ChatGPT, which segues beautifully into today's episode
Amazing.
topic, which is David here is going to enlighten us with some of his advanced strategies for marketing using ChatGPT. So after today's episode, you will be able to do some really advanced stuff when it comes to marketing and using ChatGPT. And here, David, our resident ChatGPT expert, is gonna walk us through that. So, what do you think if we get started, David?
Sounds good to me.
All
Let's
right.
rip in.
All right, sounds good, man. So take it away. What do you want to start with? Where do you want us to go? How do we start?
Yeah, so I wanted to bring this topic up today because you and I were actually talking to earlier this week. We were actually talking to a guy who has built neural networks as a job. So like an actual nerd, literally knows what he's talking about, not pretend knows what he's talking about like us.
Mhm.
And he gave us a really interesting insight into how do these robots work. And the more that you can understand how the robots work, the better that you can get at using them. So I'm going to talk specifically about ChatGPT right now because I don't care what anyone says, it's the best. It's going to continue to be the best, and it's the one that I know the most about because it is the best. I really want to talk about how does one understand the first principles of how this thing works so you can start doing more advanced, more difficult, more time-consuming stuff faster and easier. So, with that said, we kind of need to talk about the difference between how the human brain works and how we interact with uh, robots. And that's really like all of this stuff comes down to that difference. The human brain works like X. We think like, oh, I'll write an email to my list. I've been doing this for 10 years. Tap, 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 away I go, done. Whereas trying to communicate what you just did to a robot is really hard. So the breakdown between, you used a term a couple of weeks ago, you said duplicate your brain. The breakdown between what your brain can do and what ChatGPT can do lies in the interface. The hard part about using ChatGPT in an advanced way is you can only text it. That's all you can do, is you can message it. And a lot of the times the things that we do in our heads take a lot of explaining. Like think about tying your shoes or sending a message to someone, like you text someone or you call someone, you need to speak to them and they don't write back to you or they don't call you back, and then you need to follow up with them. Like we just do that automatically, but is this a professional conversation? Like, are you going for a job interview? Do you know the person really well? Like it's your boss. Are you in charge of that person? Like you're their boss and you're like, hey, where the hell's my thing that I texted you about yesterday? Get back to me about it. Like there's so many different calculations that go into play here. So I think one of the most advanced things that you can do with ChatGPT is a multi-step prompt. So I'm going to give you an example of that right now. But you use ads a lot in your agency and with the stuff that you do, Hanan. Are you finding that the prompts that you're using, generally speaking, as you understand this better, are getting longer and longer?
Oh, yes, totally. In fact, we were having a conversation before this show, and I was telling you about this project that we are launching from scratch, right? Complete, brand new from scratch. And we knew what we want to talk about. We knew what the USP was and whatnot. And we used mechanisms and techniques that I learned after working with you and after putting together, learnmarketingai.com. And it's actually getting longer and longer. Like we're going into longer and longer prompts, and they're just necessary if you want to really squeeze the juice out of the model. And now it just becomes so much easier, because then I go back to the model and I just say, all right, now write me 3 emails about this thing. And the model is so trained at this point that it's so much easier to do that. But it did take us considerable amount of time. Well, not a considerable amount of time, but it did take us some prompt engineering, if you would, when it comes to using longer and longer prompts. So totally.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about how I feel about that term prompt engineering, but that's probably the best explanation that we can come up with. So let's talk about that. I'm going to share with everyone listening here a couple of examples of how the brain works, where the sort of dysfunction happens with the chat interface with the robot, and how to get around it. So early this week, I was talking to a client who does sort of a weekly kind of roundup email. So, and I hate the fact that he does this. If anyone's doing email marketing and they're listening to this, I'm going to give you some unsolicited advice. When people go to their mailbox and they're checking their mail, they're looking at envelopes and they're like, that's probably a bank thing. I need to read that. That's probably from the government. I need to read that. Chinese takeaway brochure, don't need that. Plumber, don't need that. Crap. And they just go through their email and they're like, what looks like an ad, what doesn't? Sorry, not their email. They go through their letters and they look for what looks like an ad and what doesn't. Do not let your emails look like a Chinese takeaway menu. Like, that's just an awful thing. Not too many graphics, any of that sort of stuff. I digress. That's what this guy sends, and it kind of does work for him, which is weird, but that's what he sends. So he'll create a roundup email every single week, and they'll be like, hey, here's some content that I made. Here's a YouTube video that I did, and there'll be like 3 or 4 paragraphs below that. Here is a blog that I wrote. There'll be 3 or 4 paragraphs below that. Here's some news about what's happened in my industry. Here's a really technical sort of like piece of information. Here are some dates and some events that I'm doing in the near future. See you later. That's how his email goes. So to get ChatGPT to write something like that for him would actually save him quite a fair bit of time. But that's a really complicated thing. Let's break this down. The guy makes a YouTube video. He talks about 20 to 30 minutes worth of stuff. There's a whole bunch of points in there. And then he's got to condense that down into 3 paragraphs for the email. Same thing with the blog. He writes a whole bunch of stuff. There's a whole bunch of things that someone could learn or take away or execute on after they've read the blog. And then he's got to condense that down into 3 or 4 paragraphs worth of stuff. Then he needs to say something interesting about this event that he's going to go and speak at sometime in the near future. And he's got to write an interesting piece about some sciencey, like technical stuff that people in his industry would want to know about. There's a lot that goes into it. So knowing how does my brain do this and how can I communicate that to the robot in the most effective way is very important. So let's go through these one by one. First thing, the guy makes a YouTube video. He wants to get ChatGPT to write the email for him about that section. Let's break this thing up into its like composite pieces. You're going to have 3 to 4 paragraphs about a YouTube transcript or a YouTube video, but let's just call it a YouTube transcript. Cool. That's the first task that we need to do. The second task that we need to do is you're going to have 3 to 4 paragraphs about a blog. The next task is you're going to go to this landing page about this event. You're going to write me a paragraph about all this interesting kind of stuff. And then finally, you're going to write a technical mini article about whatever. That is how the human brain works, right? We make a YouTube video, like you and I make this video now, and we think, what's the most interesting thing that we said? Cool, let's go and write to our list about it. That's how our brain works. So when we communicate to the robot, that's the sort of thing that we need to do as well. Mm-hmm. So I feel like my explanation here is not as powerful as a demonstration of the actual prompt that we came up with. So may I start going through the different pieces of that now in the hopes that I know that not everyone here does like a roundup email about blogs and YouTubes and events and all that sort of stuff, but in the hopes that people who do use ChatGPT for more complicated stuff can model this approach.
Mm-hmm.
You cool if I do that?
Yeah, let's do it. Sounds good.
All right. Here's the first part of the prompt. I'm going to tell ChatGPT what I expect of it because I've said this before. I could ask ChatGPT to write me an essay about Donald Trump's presidency, and it wouldn't know if I meant, hey, do that from a Republican's perspective, do that from a Democrat perspective, do it as a comedian. It doesn't know. So you have to tell ChatGPT, you are an expert email copywriter with 10 years of experience, and you know how to write emails that are interesting and useful to your subscribers so they actually read and click on the stuff that I send them. And more importantly, look forward to seeing emails from me because they're well written and insightful. So you can hear what I'm trying to get out of ChatGPT there. I want this email to be actually valuable, not you're an expert email writer who knows how to condense information into the shortest amount of text possible. See the difference there? Like one of them is just just get the email, get people to click on it. The other one is make this sound interesting and cool.
Yep.
So if we're going through something like a multi-step process, like we're going to write out a newsletter type email, or like this extrapolates out to I'm going to create a webinar campaign, or I'm going to do a video launch series. What are the first things that we need to do? First of all, we need to understand the brief. So you're going to create, or I need to create a skeleton for this webinar, or in this newsletter style example, the next part of my prompt is you're going to help me write a newsletter style roundup email that will contain 3 to 4 paragraphs about a blog post that I've uploaded in the last week. Now, that's all I'm telling it. There's going to be other stuff. We'll come back to that in a second. But for now, the first job that the robot needs to worry about is just doing this blog. It doesn't need to write the rest of the email, which is how we write the email as well, right? We don't write all the different sections at once. We write the first section, done. We go to the next section, done. So that's kind of the first 2 steps there is tell ChatGPT, here's what I need from you. I need you to write an email that's interesting and useful. Here is the specifics of that. This is going to be a roundup style email. You're going to write 3 to 4 paragraphs about a blog. The next thing that we do when we sit down to write is we infuse our personality or what we think or feel people should know about whatever it is that we do, a webinar, a video series, an email into that. ChatGPT can't kind of interview us about how do we like to write, how do we want our communication with our audience to be. So the easiest thing that you can do is just give it a writing example. For this particular kind of newsletter style email that I'm talking about writing here, I could just get the last 3 sections from the last 3 weeks worth of emails, and I could just say, please review below. These are the last 3 emails that I've written about blogs, or the last, the last 3 sections of emails that I've written about blogs. Go and check out my writing style. Go and check out my brand voice, and you're going to copy that when you do this. So I won't backtrack. I'll keep moving on because we're almost done here. But as we get this sort of like fleshed out, you'll see this is how to get your brain into ChatGPT. The next thing that we want ChatGPT to do is to take content from the blog or from the YouTube video, or, if you're writing a sales page about a product or something like that, we want it to take information in this example and kind of condense it into something shorter. So here's what I would usually do with a blog. I'd read it, I'd pull out the most important couple of points, and then that's what I would write the email about. Where are the most important couple of points in a blog or a YouTube video or a product or anything like that? Generally speaking, they're at the start. So you probably only need to copy like the first 500 words of the blog post or what have you, because you wrote it, that's the most important stuff. So the next part of the prompt would be your second job or your next job after you've kind of like checked out the emails that I've written previously. Your next job is to review some content from this blog and summarize that into 3 to 4 short paragraphs, being sure to copy the brand voice and writing style that you noticed a second ago. And then you just give ChatGPT what you said you were going to give it. Here are some examples of emails that I've written in the past, and here's the transcript from the blog. And that is how you get something really complicated like, hey, you're going to write an email about this blog, or you're going to write a section for this, or you're going to write a section about this blog in this email. And then we go through the same process again, but we just take the word blog and we replace it with YouTube video transcript. And instead of YouTube video transcript, instead of the blog content, we would have the YouTube video transcript. I'm trying to get through this as fast as I can because then I can get to the punchline, which is this. What did I just tell ChatGPT to do? You know how to write a highly engaging email. You're going to write me an email specifically that follows this structure. You're going to write it about these sorts of things, and you're going to write it so it sounds like this. Is that not what we do when we write a newsletter style email like this, or a go register email, or a sales page about our product? We do it automatically, but that is how our brain functions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And, generally speaking, well, not generally speaking, but like a walkthrough, a step-by-step walkthrough with actual prompts and actual examples of going through all of this live on the spot. It's held at learnmarketingai.com. So that's something that we do at Learn Marketing AI for our students is we walk them through our prompts. We engineer the prompts from the perspective of, number one, giving it enough context. Number two, recognizing a brand voice. And number three, turning something into something else. Because once you have, let's say that you want to create you want to create a blog post from a YouTube video, you do that. And then out of the same workflow, now you can create emails. Now you can create social media posts. Now, if you want to promote that blog post through ads, you can get ads done. You can get Google ads done, Facebook ads done. You can create the entire campaign out of one big prompt that you have. And yeah, like that's the whole point. It's like the longer your prompts, the more work they require up front. But the reality is that there's a lot of frameworks involved, and there's a lot of things that we put in learnmarketingai.com for our students, which help them accelerate this process so that you don't need to, think as hard to put it together. We already did the thinking for you. But that's kind of a general overview of how to create these complex structures with ChatGPT, which are generally around turning something into something else, right? Like turning this format of information into something else, which requires a completely different set of rules, right? You cannot fit an entire blog post into an email. You need to condense it, but then you might need to multiply, an email into a blog post. So you can go back and forth. And that's why I really like this model, which is once you train the model, then you can have the entire campaign built for you in record time. So.
Yeah. I mean, you said it perfectly there. I want to address two things really quickly. For everyone who's listening and they just heard me ramble through that multi-step prompt and they're thinking, you know what? It'd be faster for me to just write the email myself than it would be for me to write out that enormous prompt. Yeah, it would. Here's the thing. You only got to write that prompt out once.
Yes.
So what did I say there? This was 5 paragraphs, and then I just copy and paste some stuff. So I said, you're an expert email copywriter. That's not going to change. Every time I write an email for my list, that's what I need from ChatGPT. I said, you're going to help me write this kind of an email. Here's the structure to it. Here's the writing style that I want you to follow. And then a little swipe file or a little couple of examples or demonstrations of my writing style. You're going to do X. So you're going to take this blog, you're going to take this YouTube transcript, and you're going to summarize it into 3 or 4 paragraphs, modeling the voice. Here is that content that I want you to summarize. Done.
Yeah.
And you would be surprised at how much time you can save by starting to put together a library of these sorts of things, walking ChatGPT through step by step. Here's how you're going to address this problem or this goal or this activity that does take me quite a while. Here's how you're going to address it with just me going 15 seconds of copy. I'm going to add in this blog post and away we go.
Yeah.
So that is advanced, but the benefit here, I think, is in being able to recognize that that's how your brain works to achieve a really good result.
Mhm.
And that is kind of how your brain works, but that is what ChatGPT needs in
Yeah.
order to achieve a result as well. So earlier this week, when we were talking to our neural network friend,
Mhm.
our artificial intelligence engineer buddy, he was explaining this idea of alignment. And alignment is basically when you ask for something that you want, you get what you want, not just what you ask for. So
Mhm.
people who have listened to this show before, you would have heard me give the example. If I ask a robot to put the milk in the fridge, it can go to the fridge, take the lid off the milk, just pour it all through the inside of the fridge, walk away and leave the door open, and I got what I asked for, but that's not what I wanted. If you want to get alignment from ChatGPT and you want it to write an email that sounds good, doesn't start with some lame, are you tired of ChatGPT doing this, or are you tired of weight loss programs that don't work, or blah blah blah? If you want it to write it in the structure that works for you and that you are specifically looking for, alignment comes from this step-by-step process. And again, like, I wish I could make a much more relevant example to the different types of folks that are going to be watching this, because I know not everyone does newsletter roundups about their blogs and YouTubes. I know some people probably have like sales call kind of businesses. Other people might be making a whole bunch of content. So they really need to know, like, how do I save time with the blogging or whatever? Think about step by step. What does ChatGPT need to do? And what does it need to know in order to give me what I'm asking for?
Yeah. Or you can go to learnmarketingai.com, because we actually have tracks for you folks doing a lot of ads like we do, or for you folks doing a lot of content, for you folks doing a lot of YouTube videos, for you folks doing a lot of different marketing stuff. And we're adding more and more tracks as we go. And I just wanted to add real quick before we close out a couple things, is that this is like sharpening the axe before, going out it and trying to cut a tree, right? You can go out there and spend most of your time getting at the tree, right? Like just kicking the tree's axe. But the reality is that's not going to be effective, right? Because you're going to end up with a lot of soreness. You're going to end up with blisters in your hand, and you're going to end up with a blunt axe, right? That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to work smart as much as working hard, but you want to sharpen the axe first. That's the one analogy. And by sharpening the axe, I mean train the model, because then you'll realize that you can save time not only in this project or this endeavor or this task that you have, but you can save time in many other things, right? So that's the one thing. And then the other thing is that this is why I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners on the daily at this point, and many solopreneurs. I know that there's a decent amount of our audience that are solopreneurs or solo marketers or freelancers and whatnot. Is that this is one of the reasons why they're not able to grow? Is because they're not willing to invest the time that it took them to actually learn the things that now they know, right? Like, for example, you have a VA, you have a freelancer, you have a new employee. You need to spend time. You need to invest time into training this person, right? Training this person so that, guess what? It's probably not going to do it as well as you can, right? You have a mastery degree, maybe you have a black belt, this person will have a red belt or whatever, but it will get you pretty close. It will get you, I would say, 80% there. Then you do a couple tweaks. But the main point is that you have saved that time to actually dedicate your mental energy, your bandwidth, into some other higher level things that you couldn't be doing if you were obsessed with control. So I think that there's a control things that you need to start giving away in order for this to make it work. But it can still get pretty close. It can still be pretty close when it comes to using these tools. And that's the promise at Little Marketing AI, to save, between 16 to 20 hours per week if you apply the proper tools and the proper strategies. So
100%. The idea of a longer prompt being like sharpening the axe rather than just getting straight to chopping, that's perfect. That's such a good metaphor, such a good way of saying it. You know what I'm calling it early? Employee of the week. Again.
the week
You can
again.
have that. You can have
Nice.
that. You can have that.
Perfect. So another week, win employee on the week. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man.
Awesome, everyone. All right. So is this it?
That's it. That's
All
everything
right,
I got to
cool.
cover. Start writing some long prompts, step by step. Really, really make it obvious to ChatGPT what it is that it needs to do.
Yes, sir. And if you want to learn how to do it with ourselves and with you and get access to our prompts and whatnot, go to learnmarketingai.com. There's a little message there. If it resonates with you, if you're doing any type of marketing, whether it is for yourself or other businesses, or if you own a marketing team, or if you have a marketing team working for you and you want them to become better, go to learnmarketingai.com because there's going to be something for you as well. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, sir. See you all soon, everyone.